The topic that we're going to focus on today is boundaries. I know that there's such a buzz these days about boundaries, but I feel like they're very, very important to our well being. Um, Let me try to define it before we get started. I wrote a couple of things down. Boundaries are a line that we draw in our relationships. They're limits that we set for ourselves and for others in those relationships. There are quite a few myths that exist about boundaries. One of them is that boundaries are mean. Boundaries are not mean. They are actually very, very protective and self-preserving, and they're very important for our overall well-being. Another myth is that because we feel guilty after setting a boundary, we feel like we have done something wrong, and that is not true. Boundaries are a way for us to protect who we are and to also take care of ourselves. Another myth that I have is that boundaries are set up to control others. This is also not true. Boundaries are really for ourselves and not really about other people. They're what we need to be the best version of ourselves. Boundaries empower us to say no so we can freely say yes. I believe that in life we really should be in scenarios whereby we're not having to say yes, we are choosing to say yes. Because I believe if we're in enough scenarios where we are made to do things, it leads to anger and resentment. And who wants to live like that? I think that it is just better to put ourselves where we choose to rather than we have to. With boundaries, it is better to communicate them early so we can set expectations in those relationships. They can be quite challenging at first, but we just have to start small. Just start with the little things that will not cost you anything or will not cost you too much friction in that relationship, and then we can build up the muscle for the bigger things. An example is if it is your personal preference that somebody calls before they come to your house. Once we've communicated that and somebody chooses to do it otherwise, we have a couple of options. It's either we do not answer the door at all, or we can answer the door and then explain that, as we have expressed before, your preference is that they call before they come to your house. And then at that point, we still need to reinforce that boundary by then letting them know that it is not a good time and so that they can return at a later time. One big mistake that we can make is allowing them in without even addressing it. That is letting them know that they can violate our boundaries at any time that they want to. We should also be comfortable with allowing natural consequences for actions. One example would be like the door, somebody coming to your door without calling first. One example would be not answering that door or not answering your phone after a certain time that you've expressed that you don't want to be called unless it's an emergency. Another aspect of this is that we do not want to reinforce bad behavior, because if we do that, then we can just expect that the behavior would be repeated. And who wants to live like that? Also, don't apologize for your boundaries. Don't seek validation to see, oh, is it right? Is it wrong? I don't agree that there's a right or wrong to boundaries. It's just whatever you need to make you your best version of yourself. One thing I do know is that it is not so critical to make people understand your boundaries, but I feel like it is very critical that people respect your boundaries without even having to necessarily understand why. Oh, you don't want to be called after 9 p.m. or you don't want people just randomly showing up at your door. In respect, we just have to understand that we all do not have the same boundaries. Some people can take phone calls after 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. on all times of the night. Doesn't mean that you can, and it doesn't mean that you then have to compromise your well-being to fit in, to do those things that may be detrimental to your health. Boundaries are self-care. They are conserving and preserving enough of yourself so that you have enough for those that are relying on you. What I mean by that is, for instance, if you are a parent, if you've given everything that you have to the outside world and then you have nothing left to give to those who really rely on you, then what's the point? I just feel like when you exercise boundaries, you find freedom in setting boundaries. And you just find that your anxiety goes down, your depression may even get better just because things just start to fall in place where they should be when you start to reinforce boundaries. I wouldn't trade it for anything in the world. I feel like once I started getting that in order, things just started to get a lot more better, and I just didn't feel as overwhelmed and stressed out with all of my responsibilities like I used to. Well, I hope you found this helpful, and I'll talk to you next time. Take care, and bye bye.